Welcome back to Tabletop Salts. I'm Ross and today I'm going to be looking at the Blood Angels datasheets, looking at 5 unit highlights. So one thing I preference this one with is there was 4 in particular that were a bit of a highlight, but they were simply just leader and unit, and that was done twice, so that would take up 4 of the spaces. I tried to spread it out by having just really the unit, then mention the leader that would go really well on top of them, so that it's not just combination spreading out, and I can just keep them to really one mention on that side. So with that, let's have a look at the units. First unit I'm going to look at is the Humble Baal Predator. So for a Predator, it is very fast, which is very essential for what we plan to do with it, as flaming attacks do require you to be up and close. For the weapons, I kind of rate the Baal Flame Storm Cannon. It does have a healthy 18-inch range, d6 plus 3, a good amount of damage, and then you add possibly the heavy flamers on top, though they need to be a little bit closer. Just really to get a lot of those auto-hitting attacks onto units. Really good for clearing out chaff or possibly clearing out even wounds, models with 2 wounds. And it will do that quite well. Abilities, it can reroll its advance roll, and when it does advance, all the weapons gain assault, but they must target infantry, which is fine because I believe with the taunt weapons, infantry is largely what you're going to target, though there may be other things such as swarms or cavalry that might be in the way, but generally you see a lot of infantry in this game, and that's what this unit wants to target. Overall, I think points are going to depend on this one, but it might be a useful unit for skirting the board, clearing out lighter units that are trying to steal objectives. I think it will be good for the Overwatch stratagem because that's a little bit different now, so it can maybe surprise unit by throwing a bunch of attacks on there. And maybe you can get into engagement range and then you can flame the unit as well. A couple of options that one. I think if it's quite well pointed, so if it's a wee bit cheap, might be one of those good units to have skirting around the field. Next we have Sanguinary Guard. Now in terms of stats, they are kind of standard to Marines, but they do have a 2+ armor save. Would have liked maybe if they had an extra pip of toughness for toughness 5. In terms of ranged weapons, I think points will decide this one a little bit more. I do like the Inferno Pistol if you are up and close, but of course just that little bit too many points. You may just want to keep them cheap with the Angular's bolt gun. In terms of a melee, you do have the Incarman Blades, which is going to take up most of them because you can only have, I think, 1 in 5 having a Power Fist. But their stats are not bad. On the charge, you are going to get +1 attack, +1 strength, meaning they are going to get 5 attacks each at +1 strength. That's been 6, so that is quite good in itself. AP -2 is okay, and damage 2 is okay. In terms of abilities, they do have a natural -1 to hit in melee, which is okay. And if the Warlord's with them, it's a -1 to wound as well. So that's really good if you've got a Warlord or someone guiding them, which we'll go into. Then you do have those good defensive bonuses if you are really pushing it and getting in melee. They also do have +1 to obsec per model if you include a banner, which depending on its price might be a bit of a take there. So overall thought, this unit has good stat lines. There is just some slightly lackluster parts where I just wish it was a little bit higher because they are an iconic unit. However, you should really take these along with Dante, because with his ability he does offer +1 to hits, and that's both ranged and melee, making them now 2s to hit, which is very good. They have +1 to charge, which helps significantly as well. And then they do usually get, if he is the Warlords, they'll get their -1 to wound in melee as well. So really you can see a dangerous unit. I can see Sanguinary Guard, if you are going to take them, it might just be a 1 unit, possibly a 10-man unit if you want a big blob. And they're running about Dante. Dante is terrifying in combat as well, though I don't believe he gets the +1 command, which some other Chapter Masters get, which I'm a little bit disappointed with. Not all Chapter Masters get it, but when you've seen that on Calgar and Azrael, really would have been nice considering he is the Lord Regent of the Imperial Nihilists. It would be good to have as well. Either or, I do think the Sanguinary Guard, led by Dante, is a really good unit. On to the Death Company now, looking at the Death Company Dreadnought. This is a bit of a weird one, but do bear with me on it a little bit. So in terms of stats, it is standard Dreadnought, which is a little bit low when you look at them in the Primaris versions, which have a lot more stats on them. It does make it a little bit vulnerable here. In terms of weapons, in ranged I'd lean towards the flamers for consistency, but then again you could take the melted guns as well, or at least it's only 1 melted gun. That's why I'm more pushing towards just the flame weapons there. In terms of melee, fists for harder hitting, though it's only 5 attacks, it does hit pretty hard, and just in case you encounter anything that is a little bit tougher. And then abilities, we have Black Rage, which offers an effective reroll, essentially reroll all hits, which is nice. I don't think you need to worry too much about the chaplain not being nearby. You can't fall back, which is a pain, but that does work out in some ways well. And then your obsec being 0, don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Magna Grapple, I think that's not bad. You lose smoke, but you do get +2 to charge against monsters and vehicles. That's pretty cool. And then the big part is the Frenzied Reprisal, which is the main point of this. All this the unit needs to be is targeted, and then after the attacks, it can attack against that unit. So that is really quite nice there. That works, I believe, for both the shooting phase and fight phase. Overall, I don't rate the Feel No Pain part, it's only 6+. But if this Dread enters combat, especially if it's one that may be trying to hold him down, he gets to attack, and then they scrape against him, he'll get to attack again. And this can possibly happen multiple times in a single phase. I don't think anything stops it from doing it again and again, so if you are fighting multiple units and they're not able to bring them down, he will scrape them again. Think again, points will decide this one, and maybe its survivability will not see it being of much use, but I can see in certain engagements, this thing will just get to attack and attack again, and just put a little bit of weight on your opponent to be quite a bit scary. On to another Death Company unit, and this is the Death Company Marines with jump packs. So in terms of stats, we have standard Marines with jump packs, but in terms of weapons, you may go for range. You might be looking at Bolt Pistol to keep them cheap. However, the Inferno Pistol is an option. In terms of melee, you've got quite a few options here, so it's really what you kind of want. And the reroll hits really pushes me towards Thunderhammers, because they're only hitting on 4s, but the reroll hits will get them a bit more. And then they do have devastating wounds, which will be very, very effective as well. Then again, it all really depends on points on that one, because if they get too much points, that wouldn't be ideal. However, on the charge, they're getting +1 attack, +1 strength, which is going to be crazily good. And then all these weapon options, I'm sure you'll be able to work out which one suits you best. In terms of abilities, you have Black Rage, which offers that, as I said, reroll hits. You really need to bring a chaplain though, because otherwise they can't fall back and they're obsec 0. So having a chaplain with its bonuses would be really, really good. You then have Berserk Fury, which allows you to reroll charge, just to ensure that they get in as well. And the Feel No Pain of 6+, I'm not really bothered with. Overall, very interesting unit. I think with Red Thirst and hitting on 9s, that's going to be really, really cool. You can look at them in terms of who leads them, which is going to be very important. You've got Astrath for death attacks, so when they die they can possibly attack back if they've not attacked already. Or you can spend one turn and they perform a whole bunch of devastating wounds, which would be really, really nice. In terms of what I think the best option is, probably Lamartes, as he has -1 damage passed on to a unit, meaning their survivability will go up quite a wee bit, meaning damage 2 stuff will need 2 attacks to kill them rather than 1, and that's really good. Minusing damage is very, very useful, and I can see that being plenty of use on Death Company Marines with jump packs. Possibly take 2 units, one of them with Ashtaroth and one of them with Lamartes. And finally we come to the Sanguinor. So in terms of stats, the toughness is a little low. I do wish it was maybe toughness 5, but it does have a nice amount of wounds at 7. In terms of weapons, high volume attacks here, which is nice. On the charge you are looking at 9 attacks at strength 7, which could be really, really good, and it does have devastating wounds. In terms of abilities, helps units that are battle shock tests, get to reroll them, and it comes in from reserve on your opponent's turn in engagement range to a charging unit. So say again, once per battle at the end of your opponent's charge phase, if this model is in reserve, you can select one of those models that made a charge move and set this model up in engagement range of that unit. I think that's crazily good. Just means that you keep him in the backfield, and say if anything does charge one of your unfavourable Blood Angel units, you can appear with Sanguinor, and because he's got Fight First and how Fight First works, although Fight First units go first, and as fight phase, the opponent whose turn the players whose turn is not taking place goes first, the Sanguinor should have a chance to be able to get its 8 attacks off, because it wouldn't count as a charge if it just appeared out of nowhere. That's quite good. I really, really rate that. I think that's a super strong. Keep him in the backfield there. He does have, as I said, Fight First and Lone Operative, so that range attack shouldn't really get to him unless they're up and close and personal. Overall, very, very dangerous, but you are taking it for that Miraculous Saviour ability. Just means that you get that once per battle, unfavourable engagement, he'll appear in and hopefully turn the tide of it. So your opponent really has to think about him. If they see the Sanguinor in your list, they've got to think very, very carefully about how the charge is going to be, because he could appear and really attack before them. And that is it for my thoughts when it comes to Blood Angels datasheets, looking at 5 unit highlights. So maybe in the Baal Predator and the Dreadnought you might not see them as much, but I do think the Sanguinary Guard led by Dante and maybe some of the Death Company jump packs might make their way onto Blood Angels uses. I can see them doing a lot of good effects there and a lot of the damage needed. And then Sanguinor seems like a bit of an auto take, just as that reserve unit that does come in and help out when needed in a struggle. So thanks again, please comment, share, like and subscribe. Interested to hear what people say about Blood Angels, and we'll see you on our Tabletop Assaults Battle Report.